Why Wall Street is exploding your water bill. The envelope looks ordinary. The number inside doesn't. $212, almost double last month. At the edge of the bill, a new line appears. System improvement fee. Dad rubs his thumb over it like the ink might smear. Mom checks the faucet like that could explain it. It runs fine. The letter tucked behind the bill says the utility changed hands last quarter. New ownership. Necessary upgrades. Regulated returns. If this lands in your kitchen next, would you even know where to push back? To understand how that fee walked into their kitchen, we need to follow the money. Back through laws rewritten, deals assembled, and a quiet shift that turned water into an investment product. The pivot, when water became an asset class. Water used to sit in the unglamorous corner of public service. Pipes, pumps, crews that knew every stubborn valve by name. The mission was simple: clean water in, dirty water out, keep it affordable, keep it safe. Then something changed. Not in the lakes or the treatment plants, on spreadsheets. Investors started calling it regulated infrastructure. That phrase matters. It means monopoly service with inelastic demand. You don't choose water like you choose cereal, and a regulator who sets rates so companies can earn a fair return. Predictable, steady, protected from recessions. For pension funds and private equity, that's catnip. The first signals showed up in conference rooms. Bankers pitched water as an asset class, alongside toll roads and airports. Pitch decks talked about demographic trends, deferred maintenance, and a scarcity premium. If climate stress made water harder to move, the capital to move it would be more valuable. Meanwhile, states opened a legal doorway. Laws modeled on Pennsylvania's fair market value statute let private buyers pay above a system's book value and then earn a regulated return on that higher price. Pay more now, collect more later, from ratepayers. Who moved first? Big regulated utilities with national reach. They had the playbook down from electricity and gas. By roll assets into a growing rate base, invest, file for rate cases, and harvest allowed returns, often 7 to 12%, on every eligible dollar. Private equity and infrastructure funds followed, sometimes teaming up with utilities, sometimes building platforms of their own. Global conglomerates saw the same dynamics and packaged operations, maintenance, and financing into turnkey offers. From their side of the table, it seemed like a win-win. Cities were broke after decades of federal disinvestment. Pipes leaked 1 trillion gallons a year nationwide. Mayors stared at 6-figure break rates and 9-figure replacement budgets. A buyer shows up promising capital upgrades, taking on debt, and wiring a one-time check big enough to patch the general fund. In exchange, the buyer gets ownership, rate cases, and time. The story traveled fast. New exchange-traded funds made it easy to buy a basket of water companies. Consultants wrote glossy reports about resilience and digital metering. Bankers staged infrastructure days, where executives promised long runways of investment. Industry code for many years of predictable spending they could put into the rate base, the pool of assets on which they'd earn returns. Inside regulatory hearings, the narrative sharpened. Companies pointed to state statutes and engineering studies to justify acquisition prices and capital plans. They called deferred maintenance a public health risk and presented the sale as the only responsible path. Expert testimony came with binders of depreciation schedules and cost of service models. On the other side of the dais, commissioners with too few staff and too many dockets weighed safety, affordability, and the law's promise of a fair return. Here's the twist that rarely made the press release. The allowed return applied to the price they paid and the projects they built, not just to service delivered. The worse the neglect, the bigger the capital need. The bigger the need, the larger the rate base. And because water demand barely budges when prices rise, people still shower, still cook, the revenue felt safe. Meanwhile, a new language crept into meetings with city councils. Instead of selling the water system, it became unlocking value and modernizing through partnership. Success fees for advisors baked a bias into the process. If the deal closed, advisors collected. If the city kept the system, nobody got paid. Public works directors warning about long-term control sounded like they were fighting the future. What nobody highlighted at the podium were the downstream math and the time horizon. A fair market value law lets a buyer pay, say, double the book value. The moment regulators accept that price into the rate base, the company starts earning its allowed return on it, year after year, plus operating costs, plus debt service. The check to the city, used to plug unrelated budget gaps, doesn't reduce your bill. It increases the foundation under it. Investors love the visibility. They could model 20-year capex plans with predictable returns, then layer in financing spreads, management fees, and tax advantages. They pointed to environmental, social, and governance labels as proof of virtue. Who doesn't want clean, resilient water? The question wasn't the goal, it was the meter running under the promise. Early acquisitions drew little attention beyond local news. Then bills started to move. Surcharges appeared with neutral names: distribution improvement charge, system infrastructure fee. Rate riders allowed mid-cycle adjustments, so companies didn't have to wait for full rate cases to start earning on new projects. To executives on earnings calls, this sounded like prudent cost recovery. To households, it felt like a bill that learned new tricks. Back at the kitchen table, the family in our opening scene didn't know any of this. They just knew the bill jumped the quarter after the sale, and the explanation was wrapped in acronyms. Their city had swapped a public service for a financial product with a guaranteed return, enforced by a regulator they'd never met. That pivot didn't happen overnight. It happened meeting by meeting, clause by clause, while nobody was watching, until water, the thing you can't live without, fit neatly in a portfolio. The acquisition playbook: how private equity buys your water. The hunt starts with a map of red and orange dots, systems flagged as distressed. Aging mains, chronic leaks. A city council that's rotated 3 times in 4 years. Debt limits hit, grant applications stalled, boiling advisories too common to trend. These aren't failures, they're opportunities. A fund analyst builds a short list and calls a banker who knows the mayor's chief of staff. First, the promise. The buyer arrives with slide decks and a tone that sounds like relief. We'll assume your debt. We'll replace 30 miles of pipe a year. We'll upgrade the treatment plant to meet the next decade of standards. And we'll wire a one-time payment big enough to renovate the library and finally fix that bridge you've put off. They don't call it a sale. They call it a partnership. The number they quote isn't book value. It's fair market value, backed by an appraisal method the state now accepts. Meanwhile, advisors circulate in the background. Consultants hired to conduct a strategic review, gather asset data, hire valuators, and draft bids. Their fee structures matter. Contingent fees pay more if a deal closes than if the city keeps control. That tilt doesn't show up on the podium, but it leans on every memo. The public works director raises a hand. If we lose in-house crews, we lose the people who can find a leak by ear. The reply is corporate. We'll retrain, we'll optimize, we'll bring best practices. The deal stack gets assembled like scaffolding. At the holding company, leverage sweetens equity returns. Debt is cheap. At least it was when rates were low. And rate design lets companies recover financing costs through customer bills. Upstream, there are management fees for the fund and service agreements with affiliates that can bill the utility for specialized expertise. Each layer extracts a slice before a single wrench turns. Next comes the choreography with regulators. The buyer files testimony from engineers and economists who explain why the price is reasonable and the investment plan urgent. They cite statutes that require a fair return on prudently incurred costs and explain that fair market value encourages rational consolidation of small, failing systems. Consumer advocates, when they're funded, push back. What's the bill impact per household? Are there cheaper alternatives? Could the city issue public debt at lower rates without giving up ownership? In the hearing room, language gets careful. The buyer doesn't say guaranteed profits. They say allowed return on the rate base. They don't say surcharges that hit next month. They say riders that align cash flow with real-time investments. They don't say we'll earn on acquisitions. They say synergies and economies of scale. They point to benchmarks showing service improvements in other districts, without mentioning the different geology, the different labor markets, the different histories. Hidden in the annexes are clauses that do the quiet work. Rate riders let the company start recovering costs for replacement projects between full rate cases. Pass-throughs shift commodity costs and taxes directly to customers with minimal lag. Performance obligations come with materiality thresholds and force majeure that create wiggle room when targets are missed. Dispute resolution goes to arbitration. If things go south and the city wants out, termination costs include stranded asset recovery. At closing, a press release goes out with a picture of a ribbon and hard hats. Employees get new badges, some. get retention bonuses. Others get offered roles at lower pay under a contractor. The city treasurer sees a wire hit the account. Council members list the projects they can finally fund. Residents don't get a vote on the purchase agreement. They meet it when the next bill arrives. The first place you feel the deal isn't in the street crews, it's on the line items. A distribution system improvement charge appears. The base rate edges up, with the explanation that the old price didn't reflect full cost of service. A system improvement fee shows up, mapped to the capital plan touted in the sale. The buyer schedules a rate case that bakes the acquisition price into the rate base and ties returns to an investment schedule stretching years. By the time you notice, the staircase is already built, step after step, no headline, just drift. From the investor call, it sounds like discipline. Management touts a pipeline of tuck-in acquisitions, each one adding customers and asset value. They highlight regulatory environments that support constructive outcomes. They talk about rate harmonization, when they fold a small town into a larger district, which often means aligning low historical rates to higher averages. They present drought resilience and leak reduction as both mission and margin. Every mile of new pipe is another dollar in the base. What nobody says out loud is the incentive problem embedded in the model. If you earn a percentage return on capital deployed, the bias tilts toward building more, not building just enough. Smart replacement is good, goldplating is not. But the line can blur when a company's performance is judged by growth in the rate base. Engineering judgment wrestles with financial targets. Regulators are supposed to referee, but they're outnumbered and outspent. And so the playbook repeats. Find the distressed. Offer relief. Lean on fair market value. Finance with leverage. Secure riders. Close. Shift into rate recovery mode. Deliver quarterly. The city moves on, but the household keeps paying. The kitchen table doesn't see a partnership. It sees a bill with a future baked in. The bill shock, fees, riders, and investment recovery. The bill doesn't explain itself, it itemizes. The base rate creeps up a few dollars. Then a distribution system improvement charge, a purchased water adjustment, a system improvement fee that wasn't there last cycle. Each line sounds technical, harmless, like a part number. Together they move the total in a way you feel in your bank account. The letter says these changes reflect necessary investment recovery. That phrase becomes the hinge between the kitchen table and the balance sheet. Here's the math that hides in those lines. Regulators allow a return on the rate base, the value of assets used to provide service. If the allowed return is 9%, every eligible dollar put into that base earns 9 cents a year before operating costs, taxes, and depreciation. When a company pays a high fair market value for a system and then accelerates capital spending, miles of pipe, meters, plant upgrades, the rate base grows. A higher base at a steady percent equals more dollars out of customers every year. The riders exist to start that recovery sooner, between full rate cases. Mid-cycle riders change the rhythm of billing. In the past, a utility made a case every few years, showed what it spent, and adjusted rates all at once. Now, a rider lets them file a narrow request. We replaced mains this quarter, we installed meters, approve a surcharge to recover those costs now. The argument is cash flow alignment. The effect is a bill that can rise in steps, without the headline of a big case. It feels like drift, but it's design. Deferred maintenance gives this engine fuel. If pipes were neglected for years, replacements can be framed as urgent and overdue. That's true, leaks waste water, breaks cause boil notices, but urgency also justifies scale. A 10-year replacement plan can become a 5-year sprint. Front-loading CAPEX puts more in the rate base sooner, which compounds the allowed return across the plan. Households aren't just paying for water. They're financing the investment schedule with a return baked on top. In one small shop on Main Street, the owner opens her bill, does a startled double take, and then looks at payroll. She runs a bakery. Water is in everything: mixers, steam, cleaning, the constant hand washing that keeps inspectors happy. The hit isn't just the total, it's the unpredictability. Last quarter, she budgeted against one rate. This quarter, a rider pushed it higher. She has to decide whether to raise prices on bread that already feels expensive or cut a shift. Neither option feels like infrastructure improvement. She pins the bill to a corkboard labeled non-negotiables and circles the fee in red. Supporters of the model don't dodge the cost. They'll tell you old systems need capital and public budgets won't cover it. That's real. When a main breaks under a hospital driveway, someone has to pay to fix it and replace the next mile before it fails. The question isn't whether to invest, it's who captures the upside from that investment. In a regulated model, the company earns a return for decades. If the project reduces leaks, lowers energy use, or cuts chemical costs, those savings can show up as lower operating expenses and improved margins. Customers pay the principal and the allowed return. The owner captures efficiency gains as profit unless regulators force a pass-through. Another detail lives in the meter upgrade pitch. Smart meters reduce manual reads, catch leaks faster, and smooth billing. They also create a new asset class, tens of millions in devices and software that enter the rate base. Vendors sell them with performance guarantees, but the utility earns on the hardware either way. When leaks decline, non-revenue water drops. The company can claim improved service while the bill rises to cover the investment that made that improvement possible. It's not a contradiction, it's the model. Look at the fee names again. A system improvement fee sounds like a one-time bump. It rarely is. It's often linked to an ongoing plan with target miles of pipe per year. When the plan renews, the fee can too. A purchased water adjustment passes through higher wholesale costs from a regional provider. That's fair, unless the company negotiated the wholesale terms. A distribution charge reflects the network's fixed costs spread across fewer gallons if conservation kicks in. Households that use less still pay more to cover the math of fixed assets earning fixed returns. There's also the harmonization effect. When a private owner rolls a small system into a larger district, rates align across the territory. If your town's been cheap historically, alignment moves you toward the higher average. It's framed as fairness, same service, same rate. It also lifts revenue per customer without a single new project in your street. The people most exposed sit at the edges. Renters whose water is bundled into rent, seniors on fixed incomes, small towns where a dining room's tips decide the heat bill. Income-based relief exists in some places, but enrollment is low and paperwork heavy. Shutoff policies vary. In places that allow it, past due accounts can move into liens, then mortgages, then property risk. What started as a surcharge becomes a housing problem. Yes, regulators can push back. They can trim requests, cap riders, demand proof of prudence. But capacity matters. These cases are technical marathons. Consumer advocates need funding to audit filings line by line. Without that, fees glide through with expert testimony unchallenged. The bill feels like a weather report. It just happens, and you adapt. Behind the envelope, a spreadsheet updates. Targets tick green, CAPEX deployed, rider approved, rate-based growth within guidance. On an earnings call, the CEO thanks regulators for a constructive environment and reiterates confidence in the multi-year plan. Meanwhile, the bakery decides to raise the price of a loaf by a quarter and cut the afternoon shift on Wednesdays. Investment recovery found its way into someone's hours. Balance sheet alchemy, debt, dividends, and the rate base game. To see why the fees feel relentless, you have to leave the kitchen table and walk onto the holding company's balance sheet. That's where the real engineering happens. Not in the trench, in the capital stack. Start with the rate base. It's the book of assets used to provide service. Mains, meters, plants, pumps, valued under regulatory rules. The allowed return applies to that base. So every decision upstream asks one quiet question. Does this end up in the base? If yes, it's a future earnings stream. If no, it's overhead to be minimized or pushed somewhere else. Debt turns the dial. When interest rates were low, debt financed most acquisitions and capital plans. In a regulated framework, companies argue that prudent financing costs should be recovered in rates. That means the holding company can borrow cheaply, buy a system at fair market value, invest aggressively, and recover both depreciation and a return on the undepreciated balance through bills. Equity collects the spread between the allowed return and the blended cost of capital. Leverage magnifies that spread. Meanwhile, cash doesn't sit idle. Dividends flow upstream to parent companies. Management fees and shared services agreements let affiliates bill the utility for corporate support. IT, consulting, insurance, even rent. Some of that is legitimate. Some is a gray zone where a regulated utility pays a sister company at a price set by internal policy, not the market. Regulators are supposed to police related party deals, but the paperwork is dense and the categorization flexible. Sale-leasebacks live in that gray, too. A utility can sell a piece of equipment or a facility to an affiliate, then lease it back. The asset still serves customers, the cash goes upstream. Lease payments become operating expenses passed through rates. The affiliate books the rent. Both sides file paperwork showing compliance. From the outside, service looks normal. On the inside, value has migrated. Asset swapping is another move. If a network spans multiple towns, companies can reclassify segments, fold small systems into larger districts, and harmonize rates. The stated goal is efficiency. The side effect is blending cheaper legacy rates into higher averages while expanding the pool over which corporate costs are spread. Every reclassification is a chance to tuck more into the base, to claim more economies, and to reset depreciation schedules. Then there's gold-plating risk, the classic temptation to overbuild when returns are tied to capital deployed. It's not cartoonish. Nobody installs diamond pipes. It looks like choosing a premium material where standard would do. Oversizing a pump station for a growth forecast that's aspirational, layering redundant sensors to justify a smart label. Each decision has a rationale. Together they tilt the system toward higher capital intensity, which means a larger base and more return. Regulatory testimony often counters with the used and useful standard. Only assets that genuinely serve customers should earn. But useful is elastic, and prudence is judged after the fact, through hearings where the utility has the data and the time. Consumer advocates can win trims, but they rarely rewrite the plan. Once steel is in the ground, it's hard to disallow. Investors like this because cash flows become predictable. Earnings calls are full of phrases like constructive regulation and multi-year visibility. Utilities guide to rate-based growth in the high single digits, which, with allowed returns and operating discipline, translates to dividend growth targets. Pension funds want exactly that: long-duration, inflation-hedged cash they can match to liabilities. The story sells itself. Social proof seals it. When one commission goes constructive, others tend to follow. But the same structure builds fragility. Rising interest rates squeeze the spread. If the allowed return doesn't adjust quickly, the utility earns less on a more expensive capital stack, and pressure shifts to expenses and rate requests. Drought adds another layer. If conservation reduces volume sold, fixed costs don't shrink. Rate designs adjust with higher fixed charges or decoupling, but households feel punished for saving water. Credit ratings watch all of it: regulatory support, weather risk, leverage. A downgrade raises borrowing costs, which the utility then seeks to recover in rates, which stirs more political heat, which can spook regulators. It's a loop. Meanwhile, cash extraction doesn't stop. Upstream dividends continue because parent companies promised growth to their own investors. If a commission trims a rate request, the company can slow capex for a quarter, stretch maintenance, delay hires, and still meet payout targets. That's where service erodes, not from one big cut, from a series of temporary deferrals that become the new normal. There's also the tax angle. Accelerated depreciation is a tool, letting companies shelter income now and pay later. In a regulated model, depreciation lowers taxable income while customers still pay the full freight through rates. Timing differences smooth earnings for owners and spread costs over decades for everyone else. It's perfectly legal and completely invisible on your bill. The incentive machine keeps whirring. Add assets to the base, recover financing costs, send dividends, repeat. You can call it alignment. Capital finds need, customers fund resilience, investors earn for risk. Or you can call it extraction. Essential service converted into a bond-like product with fees layered in. Both are true on different days. Back at the bill, none of this is visible. You see system improvement fee. Somewhere else, a slide marks rate-based CAGR, 8 to 10%. The language is different, the connection is direct. The pipeline isn't just under the street. It runs from your sink to a spreadsheet that assigns your payment to interest, to return, to rent, to management fees, to a dividend declared last quarter, and the next quarter, and the next. Betting on thirst, scarcity trades, water rights, and futures. While bills rise in town, a second market hums far from any hydrant. It doesn't own your pipes. It rents the water itself. Start in the West, where rights move like currency. A century of law carved rivers into paper. Senior, junior, consumptive use, return flows. In drought years, those papers decide who plants and who waits. Funds noticed. They began aggregating rights the way others buy farmland, parcel by parcel, basin by basin, focusing on senior priority that survives dry allocations. The pitch is simple: lease water in wet years, command a premium in dry ones. Scarcity becomes a pricing lever. On a ranch outside a small valley town, a family gets an offer they've never seen: cash today for a seasonal lease. Their ditch won't run full anyway, the buyer says, and the city downstream needs water for taps. The numbers help cover a new pivot and last year's vet bills. They sign. That summer, the alfalfa goes to 1 cut instead of 2. The town's feed store closes an hour earlier. The family doesn't call it finance. They call it getting by. On a spreadsheet in a different time zone, the lease shows up as yield. Meanwhile, a new instrument arrives with a market ticker. The Nasdaq Veles California Water Index turns fragmented transactions into a weekly price. It doesn't move physical water. It tracks the cost of rights across key basins. Futures tied to that index let players hedge or speculate. A farmer can, in theory, lock in the cost of next year's allocation. A fund can bet that drought will push the index up. Both orders land the same on the exchange. Back in policy circles, this is framed as modern risk management. Price discovery, better planning, less surprise. There's truth in that. Volatile inputs crush businesses. But the presence of a hedge also invites a trade. If a basin dries and the index spikes, someone on the other side of the contract gets paid precisely because water got more expensive. The incentive isn't to cause drought, it's to be positioned for it. Still, when return improves with scarcity, caution phrase. The rights market has another twist: buy and dry. A fund acquires senior agricultural rights, then permanently transfers some portion to municipal use. Cities pay because the alternative is growth caps and political pain. The valley upstream loses irrigated acres. Dust picks up. The school loses enrollment. County budgets thin. The fund marks a gain and moves to the next basin. A basin council meets to write new transfer rules. The attorneys are ready. There's also a quieter arbitrage in storage. Control a surface reservoir or a groundwater bank, and you control timing. Store in a wet spring. Release in a hot September when prices peak. Layer on conveyance capacity, access to canals and exchanges, and you can shuttle molecules legally while capital cycles financially. The geography gets mapped to cash flows. The river becomes a calendar. Meanwhile, utilities caught between fixed costs and variable hydrology look for cushions. They sign option-like contracts with rights holders. Call water if flows fall below a trigger. Those premiums, paid in good years, become one more line item in the rate case. When the trigger hits, the option pays in acre-feet that keep the plant running. Households see none of the mechanics. They just see another pass-through. Not every market is predatory. Some leases keep orchards alive through a bad year. Some groundwater banks prevent subsidence and salt intrusion by formalizing recharge. But blended into the good are structures that monetize the emergency. Drought becomes a spreadsheet event. A wildfire that silted a reservoir reads as a basis move. A shutoff order becomes a headline and a trade. If it pays when scarcity deepens, the path of least resistance is to plan for scarcity, not to end it. The index future becomes a story at the kitchen table only when it meets a headline someone can feel. A water district pays above last year's price to secure next quarter's supply. A rider captures the difference. An AG Valley leases out a month of water. The cannery runs for 3 weeks instead of 4. A city issues a press release about resilience. A fund issues a letter about performance. And there's the moral hazard nobody wants to own. If you hold a portfolio that benefits when water prices rise, or when leases clear at higher premiums, you're aligned with scarcity. You don't cause it, but you're long the outcome. In a world where climate makes scarcity more likely, that position will look prescient and feel wrong at the same time. Look again at the bakery that cut a shift. The flour mill upstream paid more for processed water after a tight year. It passed costs into sacks. The district passed premiums through a purchased water adjustment. The index ticked up 3 times last summer and drifted down in December rains. A hedge paid someone in October. The baker never saw the trade. She felt the drought. Twice, once in her bill, once in her flour. Meanwhile, small towns downstream from transfer hubs learn a vocabulary they didn't want. In-stream flow, return obligation, wheeling rate. Meetings fill with maps showing arrows that carry both water and money. Residents ask who sets the price of what used to be a ditch. The answer is part statute, part market, part season, part screen. What nobody markets in the deck is the endgame. If scarcity is a revenue source, adaptation can shrink it. Leak reduction, turf replacement, recycled water, desalination, stormwater capture. Each blunts the premium. Good policy lowers volatility. Good portfolios like volatility. That tension sits under today's water finance. It's not a conspiracy. It's an incentive gap wide enough to swim in. Disaster as yield, catastrophe bonds, and drought-linked payouts. While traders watch water indices, another market prices disaster itself. It sits at the junction of insurance and finance and pays when thresholds are crossed. Utilities have started to tap it. It's called a catastrophe bond. Here's how a cat bond works in plain terms. A sponsor, maybe a state risk pool, sometimes a utility or water district, creates a special vehicle. Investors put money in. If no disaster occurs above the trigger, investors get their money back at the end plus a healthy coupon along the way. If the trigger is met, a defined flood, a drought index, a contamination event, the money isn't returned. It flows to the sponsor to cover emergency costs. Investors price that risk up front. The bond pays yield because bad things might happen. The draw is obvious. Budgets can't absorb back-to-back shocks. Traditional insurance comes with exclusions and claim fights. A cat bond promises speed and certainty. The trigger is parametric. A rain gauge, a river gauge, a drought index, a toxin concentration, something measured by a third party. If the metric hits the number, capital releases. No adjusters, no haggling. In a crisis, days matter. But there's an alignment problem baked into the coupon. If you're the investor, you win when the trigger isn't met. If you're the sponsor, you get paid when it is. That doesn't make anyone root for drought or contamination. It does mean there's money on both sides of the line and fees collected either way. Structuring banks earn when the bond is issued. Managers take a cut for holding the risk. Meanwhile, the cost of that safety net gets folded back into rates because it's part of the utility's financial plan. Walk through a scenario. A river basin slips into a multi-year dry spell. A metropolitan water district fears a curtailment that would force rationing and emergency purchases. It sponsors a drought-linked bond tied to a standardized index for the region. If the index falls below a trigger for a set period, the bond pays the district a lump sum to buy transfers, drill emergency wells, or truck water. If the index never hits, the district pays the coupon out of operating revenue. That coupon becomes a line in the next rate case. Prudent risk transfer. On paper, that's rational. You're smoothing catastrophe across time. In practice, it shifts volatility into a fee households pay whether the bad year arrives or not. When it does arrive, the payout helps, but it's not free money. Residents have been pre-funding access to emergency cash, and the coupon has been padding portfolios that specialize in insurance-linked securities. Now add another wrinkle: contamination triggers. A utility with aging distribution lines worries about a failure that pulls in groundwater with PFAS above regulatory limits. A parametric structure ties a payout to certified test results above a threshold. If contamination is confirmed, funds release for filters, bottled water, and accelerated replacements. It's fast, it's clean on paper, and it outsources financial shock to investors who want non-correlated returns. But it also creates a market where a spike in a lab result becomes an event that moves money. Compliance departments tighten. Legal teams parse sampling protocols. The stakes inside a test vial climb. Municipal finance officers see the appeal beyond speed. Cat bonds sit off the city's debt balance. They don't count against borrowing caps, and rating agencies often view them as credit positive if designed well. Politically, that's attractive. You can say you secured private capital to backstop climate risk without raising formal debt. The premiums are abstract until they're not, until a rate case rolls them into base costs with the label risk management. Investors describe the strategy in different language. Insurance-linked securities add diversification because hurricanes and droughts don't move with stock indexes. The coupons are rich when models say the odds are low. Managers build funds that blend perils across regions, hoping one basin's drought is another's wet year. They stress that underwriting is conservative, triggers are objective, and moral hazard is limited because nobody can conjure rainfall. The model feels clinical. The reality is lived. In a foothill town, a burn scar from last year's wildfire turns the first storm into mud. Turbidity spikes. The plant shuts intake, flips to reserves, issues a boil notice, and cries for help. A parametric threshold is hit. Money arrives by the week's end. Filters, overtime, bottled water paid. The general manager breathes. 2 months later, a hearing convenes. The utility asks to recover premiums and administrative costs. The commission nods. Customers paid for the backstop. They'll keep paying because the next storm might be worse. There's a subtler loop, too. Once a bond is in place, it can anchor other decisions. If a city knows a payout will arrive at a certain drought severity, it might defer an expensive redundancy another year. That's not malice. It's budget math. The safety net changes timing. Then climate tightens, triggers fire, payouts flow, and the deferred project comes due anyway, now at a higher cost with interest in the rate base. None of this makes cat bonds villains. They're tools. In a hotter, drier world, financial tools will be used. The question is who pays for them and how incentives line up. The farther we move from pipes and people into screens and coupons, the harder it is for a voter to see the deal they're in. The bakery owner doesn't know her bill includes a slice for a drought bond. She just knows that after the last dry summer, a resilience surcharge appeared. The district's slide deck shows prudent planning. An investor's letter shows steady yield. Between them is a household prepaying for disaster and a market ready to monetize it when it hits. Service erosion, breaks, boil notices, and the maintenance gap. Meanwhile, something else is happening at street level. The numbers work for investors only if the system keeps humming. But humming requires people, parts, and time. The unglamorous craft that turns steel and chlorine into trust. When margins tighten, those are the first places to stretch. Start with the pipes you don't see. Many are past their design life. Joints slip. Corrosion eats from the inside. A leak doesn't announce itself. It whispers through soil until a hollow opens and a bust tire finds it. Brakes aren't evenly distributed. Older neighborhoods, built when iron was cheap and lead was legal, carry more risk. When a crew is thin and replacement plans are aggressive but misaligned, emergency repairs dominate the calendar. Each emergency crowds out scheduled maintenance. Each deferral piles risk into the next month. Boil notices are the visible symptom. One Friday, a pressure drop trips a sensor. The plant loses positive pressure in a zone after a main breaks under a railroad crossing. Without pressure, contaminants can intrude. Protocol kicks in: isolate, flush, sample, notify. A robocall tells thousands to boil water for a day. For the lab tech, it's routine. For a home health aide getting ready for a double shift, it's another hour of boiling pots before she can make bottles for her grandson. She texts her neighbor to grab extra ice. She doesn't have time to read the press release. Staffing is the quiet hinge. Before the sale, the system had operators who could listen to a pump and guess the bearing's age within a month. After, some retire rather than switch employers. Others get offers with new job titles and lower base, pay under an outsourced maintenance contract. The bench thins. Institutional memory dissipates. The vendor brings software and dashboards, which help, but dashboards don't climb into a vault at 3 a.m. A single vacancy in an electrical crew can turn a minor outage into a long night. That's how a spreadsheet target becomes a boil notice. Outsourcing looks efficient on a slide. It bundles specialties, valve turning, meter installs, trenching, under performance metrics. But metrics skew behavior. If a contractor is paid per mile of valve exercising, they'll hit miles. If they're paid per leak found, they'll find leaks. The art is in the exceptions. The odd hum, the hydrant that always sticks on the third turn, the easement a map misprints. That art lives in people who've walked the route for 20 years. When they're gone, you can meet the letter and miss the spirit. Compliance theater shows up in binders. The operator logs are immaculate. The sampling plan is correct. The monthly report hits the regulator's inbox on time. But a lab test isn't a barrier, it's a snapshot. A system needs margin. Overbuilt where failure hurts most, redundancy where a single point can cascade. When capital plans chase allowed returns rather than risk-weighted priorities, shiny projects can crowd out ugly essentials. A new headquarters scores well in a presentation. Replacing a half-mile of asbestos cement in a cul-de-sac does not. Human consequences collect in small ways. A school custodian spends Saturday flushing fountains after a notice lifts. A dialysis center reschedules. Morning sessions because the facility needs assurance before hooking patients to machines. A landlord, already slow on repairs, uses a boil notice as cover for mold he won't address. In neighborhoods with language barriers, notices arrive in English first. By the time translations circulate, the window has passed. Regulators try to hold the line with penalties for repeat violations and conditions on rate approvals. Increase leak detection, add staff, meet replacement targets by zip code. But their technical teams are stretched. A docket can include dozens of filings, each with hundreds of pages. Oversight is intense where a scandal breaks, quiet elsewhere. Companies shuffle crews to hot spots before audits, then revert to the mean. Meanwhile, capital chases visibility. Smart meter rollouts proceed because they're quantifiable. Treatment plant control upgrades get funded because they produce screens. But the ground truth still requires wrenches and backhoes. Non-revenue water, losses from leaks and theft, might tick down on a report, yet one stubborn district keeps blowing gaskets. The fix is slow, valve by valve, map by map, training a new crew to hear what the old crew knew by heart. In a river town, the maintenance gap intersects with climate. A late summer heat dome drives demand. The plant runs near capacity. A pump trips, an older backup sputters, and pressure dips again. Another notice. Residents roll their eyes. It's the third this year. A council member asks the utility why the redundancy project isn't done. The answer loops back to the rate case. The commission trimmed last year's request, so the timeline slid. Investors still got their dividend. The redundancy is now slated for next spring. This is how service erodes, not with one dramatic failure, but with friction that becomes normal. Breaks that should have been prevented. Notices that feel seasonal. Response times that stretch just enough to matter. Customers adapt. They keep bottled water in the pantry. They buy a filter. They learn which hydrants bleed fastest. That adaptation masks the decline until a crisis lands in a place that can't absorb it. An elder care home, a prison, a chemotherapy ward. The bakery adjusts too. Boil notices mean scrubbing the ice machine and dumping doughs. She keeps extra jugs on hand and a calendar of past notices taped to the fridge, hoping to see a pattern she can plan around. There isn't one. Each event has a different cause, but the root is the same. A maintenance gap widened by incentives that favor CAPEX you can rate base over staffing and routine you can't. Companies will say they meet standards, and many days they do. The question is resilience under stress and equity under scarcity. When a system runs at the edge, the risk doesn't land on a ledger. It lands in kitchens, clinics, and classrooms that don't have backup plans. That's where the constructive model shows its cost. In the hours people lose cleaning up after a service that's supposed to be invisible. The pushback, referendums, buybacks, and public option revival. While bills climbed and boil notices multiplied, something else stirred. Communities decided to fight. The first wave looked local and small. A petition at the library, a folding table outside a grocery store, a line of neighbors at a council meeting wearing the same color t-shirt. The stakes weren't abstract. They were rent, groceries, and a basic service that no longer felt basic. Ballot measures became the sharpest tool. In some towns, residents forced votes to block future privatization or require public approval before a sale. The campaigns were simple: keep control, keep accountability. Volunteers knocked on doors with photocopied bills as props. Homeowners who never attended a public meeting found themselves arguing about rate riders on porches at dusk. The message landed because the envelopes had. Elsewhere, the pushback took a harder route, by the system back. Remunicipalization sounds bureaucratic. On the ground, it's neighbors deciding to pay twice, once through years of higher bills, again to reclaim the asset. Negotiations opened with numbers that stunned councils. The fair market value that inflated the rate base also inflated the exit price. A city that sold for tens of millions faced a buyback at multiples of that, with legal clauses about stranded asset recovery and termination costs waiting in annexes. One city stared down the premium anyway. When leaks, notices, and rate increases stacked up, residents demanded control. The finance director laid out the reality. A buyback meant issuing bonds, absorbing operational risk, and paying lawyers more than anyone wanted to say aloud. The vote passed. The city paid a price that felt like ransom and inherited a system that needed work. The first year was rough. Then crews stabilized. A local operator trained apprentices who grew up 2 blocks from the plant. The bills didn't drop overnight, but the surcharges got simpler, the line. Items fewer, the explanations clearer. Not every buyback made headlines. Many were messy and quiet, negotiated to avoid courtroom brawls. Some failed when bond markets turned, or when councils couldn't stomach the sticker price. Those failures shaped the next tactic: stop the sale before it starts. People learned to recognize the early signals. Strategic review, on an agenda, consultant RFPs for valuation, closed-door sessions about asset optimization. They showed up early, asked for fee structures, demanded that advisors be paid whether or not a sale happened, and pushed for public-side expertise at the table. New models grew in the cracks. Public-public partnerships linked a small town's plant to a regional operator with no profit motive, sharing staff and know-how without selling the asset. Co-ops formed in rural areas where a handful of systems banded together under member control, trading glossy dashboards for steady service. Performance contracting emerged with guardrails. Pay vendors for verified leak reductions and water quality improvements, not just installations, with penalties that bite if targets are missed. Transparency campaigns gave people leverage. Activists filed records requests for rate casework papers, those spreadsheets that translate engineering plans into monthly charges, and posted them online with plain English annotations. Citizen boards audited rights-of-way and found contractor invoices for work that wasn't finished. A city published every related party transaction in its water utility, rent, insurance, shared services, and forced the owner to rebid some at market rates. The savings weren't cinematic, they were cumulative. And every small win fed momentum. People join when they see neighbors winning. Legal levers sharpened. Councils wrote ordinances requiring profit sharing once allowed returns exceeded targets. Contracts added clawbacks if promised replacement miles slipped. Performance benchmarks moved from vague to measurable. Leak rate by district, repair response time by zip code, boil notices tracked with automatic credits to affected customers. A commission conditioned a rate increase on adding unionized operators and funding an independent consumer advocate's office. The owner appealed. The court let the conditions stand. The global mirror mattered, too. Stories from places that unwound privatization, cities in Latin America and Europe, filtered into local debates. Residents heard about rate spikes, protests, contract terminations, and the political coalitions it took to reverse course. They also heard why some regions stuck with private models, fiscal crises, IMF conditions, investor-state treaties that made termination costly. Those lessons tightened local procurement rules. No arbitration outside public courts, transparent terminations, capped advisory success fees, and explicit limits on leverage. A climate frame complicated the pushback. Owners pitched resilience, ESG bonds, green upgrades, drought planning. Some of it was real. Some of it padded the rate base with marketing-grade tech. Communities learned to ask for value-for-money tests on climate plans and to separate useful adaptation from greenwashing. If a smart sensor spend didn't reduce leaks, energy, or outages, it failed. If it did, the savings had to flow back as bill credits, not just show up as margin. The human coalition was the constant. Tenants who couldn't control their landlord's shutoff policies found common cause with small businesses hit by unpredictable riders. Seniors on fixed incomes stood next to union crews worried about outsourcing. Environmental groups and farm advocates compared notes on rights transfers that dried fields and spiked municipal premiums downstream. The coalition didn't fit one ideology. It fit a utility bill. In one suburb, that coalition won a simple change with big effects. A local law mandating voter approval for any sale of the water system. It didn't stop a rate case. It didn't fix old pipes. It moved the decision about ownership out of a conference room and into a ballot box. The following spring, a consultant's strategic review died in committee. The mayor shrugged. The notice had been posted. People showed up. Global mirror, where privatization failed and where it stuck. While neighbors organized at home, other cities abroad had already lived through the cycle: sale, spike, backlash, reversal. Their paths weren't identical, but the patterns rhymed. Take Buenos Aires in the 1990s. A private consortium took over with promises of universal access and new pipes. Early years delivered some expansion. Then the peso crashed, tariffs rose, and currency risk knocked the math sideways. Households faced bills that felt like foreign debt collections. Service faltered. Protests filled streets. Courts, Politics and public pressure converged. The contract ended. The city returned operations to a public company and began the slow work of rebuilding capability it had let atrophy. Manila went the other way. At first, two private companies split the metro in the late 1990s. Non-revenue water fell. Connections expanded. For a while, the case showed what private capital plus discipline could do. Then droughts tightened, exchange rates shifted, and arbitration became a second business model. Tariffs jumped. Disputes over pass-throughs and returns played out in tribunals far from the neighborhoods that paid. When you need a faucet to run, you don't care about a ruling in Singapore. You care that bills rise faster than wages. Paris made a cleaner break. After decades of private operation, the city brought water back in-house in 2010. It wasn't a slogan, it was a decision anchored in numbers. The municipality wanted control over pricing and investment priorities, transparency on costs, and flexibility on equity goals. A new public operator cut some outsourced contracts, built internal capacity, and set up citizen oversight. The move didn't turn bills into gifts. It did move decisions into rooms where elected officials could answer for them. Elsewhere, reversals came after spectacular failures. In Cochabamba, Bolivia, a contract paired with steep price hikes sparked protests that became global shorthand, the water war. The company left. The city retook control. The aftermath was messy. Politics didn't make wells appear. But the episode seeded a lesson that traveled. Privatization without affordability guardrails and public legitimacy breeds instability that kills deals. Not every place reversed course. England and Wales privatized their water and sewer systems in 1989 and stayed the course. Companies raised capital, upgraded treatment, and met big environmental targets. They also leveraged up, paid out large dividends, and navigated weak penalties for performance slippage. In recent years, sewage spills and debt-laden balance sheets turned public mood. Bills funded both infrastructure and financial engineering. The model persisted because contracts were entrenched, regulators leaned constructive, and unwinding would cost billions. Stuck, in practice, looks like periodic outrage, regulatory tweaks, and continued private control. In Chile, a largely privatized urban water sector delivered reliable service by conventional metrics, but equity questions never left. Tariffs had affordability subsidies, yet ownership sat with pension funds and foreign investors. Currency risk, again, entered through the back door. Local bills floated on global finance. Devaluation elsewhere translated into pressure here. When drought deepened, rationing debates reopened the question of who sets priorities when supply thins: shareholders, city halls, or basin councils. In Jamaica and Ghana, attempts to concession water systems hit friction from day one: tariff politics, weak regulation, and public skepticism. Contracts collapsed or expired without renewal, leaving institutions bruised and capacity gaps wider. Failure here didn't mean taps ran dry. It meant the blend of financial terms, regulatory power, and local trust never gelled. Without that, the deal became a fight the operator didn't want to keep losing. Germany offers a quieter counterexample. Berlin's partial privatization in the late 199s looked like a compromise. Keep some public stake, bring in private capital. Tariffs rose. Secrecy clauses hid terms. Citizens pushed a referendum to publish the contracts, then pressed for buybacks. The city paid to unwind, learned from the pain, and wrote procurement guardrails that demanded transparency and capped returns. The result wasn't ideological purity. It was institutional memory hardened into law. The IMF and development banks shaped other outcomes. In parts of Africa and Asia, loan conditions nudged or required private participation. Governments cash-strapped from other crises accepted. When service didn't improve or bills rose, public backlash collided with treaty-backed investor protections. Investor-state dispute settlement made exits expensive. Once arbitration can stick a government with a claim, elections don't reset the board, they price it. Currency risk threaded through the failures. Where revenues are in local currency and financing is in dollars. Or euros, devaluation forces a choice. Raise tariffs, seek subsidies, or breach covenants. Raise tariffs and you face streets. Seek subsidies and you're back to the same fiscal strain that led to sale. Breach and lenders circle. A model that looks tidy in a pitch bends under exchange rates no operator controls. Lessons travel if you want them to. Procurement guardrails matter. Publish contracts, ban excessive advisory success fees, require public interest tests with clear affordability metrics, and prevent arbitration that bypasses domestic courts. Termination cost design matters. Don't bake in guarantees that make buybacks fiscal suicide. Build public capacity, engineers, operators, financial analysts, so you're not negotiating blind. Tie returns to outcomes that people feel, fewer leaks, fewer notices, not just capital deployed. Where privatization stuck, it often hid inside necessity and time. Systems needed money, contracts embedded complexity, and regulators chose stability over disruption. Where it failed, it carried a familiar story: price hikes, service disputes, and decisions made far from the taps. In both cases, the bill landed the same way: monthly, unavoidable, and explained in words that only made sense to people who'd never boiled a pot after midnight because a notice said to. The climate pretext: greenwashing the rate base. While fights played out in hearing rooms, a new language rolled in: resilience, sustainability, net zero, adaptation. It sounded like a fix and often hit a fee. Climate is real. The question was how it got priced, and who earned on the price. Start with the pitch deck. A utility executive points to wildfire runoffs, heat domes, and 100-year storms arriving every 5. The slide lists solutions: wildfire ash barriers, flood-proofed substations, backup generators, microgrids at treatment plants, advanced sensors, AI leak detection, satellite soil moisture analytics. Each box comes with a capital line and a 3-word promise: resilience, reliability, ESG. Investors see a growth runway. Regulators hear a safety case. Customers meet a climate fee. Some projects are essential. Flood walls around low-lying pump stations prevent sewage in basements. Backup power at intakes keeps chlorine dosing stable when the grid wobbles. Recycled water lines to industrial users free up potable supply for homes. Those are climate upgrades that reduce risk you can feel. They also enter the rate base for decades, which means allowed returns stacked on top of materials, labor, and financing. If the work's real, that's the price of living in a hotter world. The line between necessary and performative is where greenwashing sneaks in. Here's how the performative looks. A utility proposes a network of smart sensors across the entire district, priced for military-grade reliability, with software subscriptions bundled through an affiliate. The stated benefits are predictive maintenance and leak detection. A pilot would have found most leaks with half the gear. The full rollout, however, turns into a $75 million asset that earns a return every year. The savings from fewer leaks show up as lower operating costs, which the owner books as improved margin unless a commission captures them. The climate label covers the spread. Marketing-grade gear is another tell. Sensors that produce dashboards for boardrooms, not tools for crews. Drones for PR footage rather than basin mapping. AI slapped onto vendor packages that are rule-based alerts in new clothing. Each device is an asset, each subscription a pass-through. The climate story is true in the abstract. The value for money case fails in the detail. ESG-linked debt adds a gloss. A utility issues a sustainability bond with a slightly lower coupon tied to targets. Miles of main replaced, gallons of non-revenue water reduced, energy use per gallon treated. The targets sit near the already planned trajectory. The bond is cheaper by a handful of basis points, which the press release touts as savings for customers. The larger capital plan still grows the rate base. The optics carry more weight than the delta on your bill. Climate fees arrive as riders with soft names: resilience surcharge, adaptation cost recovery, wildfire mitigation charge. They're open-ended by design because climate risk doesn't end in 3 years. Each true incident, burn scar mudslides, drought index triggers, becomes proof of prudence. The fee that was pitched as temporary drifts toward permanent. If a commission doesn't pin down scope and sunset, it becomes one more step in that upward staircase people can't track. Equity gets lost fastest. Frontline neighborhoods, low-lying, downwind, downriver, are billed for adaptation after years of underinvestment left them exposed. Wealthy districts get undergrounding and redundant feeds first because they have clout. A climate plan without equity metrics can become a regressive tax in green clothing. The fix is specific: require project lists that map to risk. By zip code, mandate service improvements that reduce boil notices where they're most common and credit customers automatically when promised milestones slip. There's a clean test communities have learned to apply: value for money with public math. Does this project measurably cut outages, leaks, energy per gallon, or contamination risk at a cost per unit that beats alternatives? Are cheaper, less capital-intensive options evaluated, pressure management, valve optimization, district metering, before the smart everything package? Are savings ring-fenced to reduce bills, not disappear into general margin? Is there a pilot with public data that justifies scaling? If the answer is no, it's a climate pretext, not a plan. Share this test at meetings. Once people can spot it, they won't unsee it. Vendors know how to sell around that test. They'll promise performance guarantees. If leak reduction doesn't hit X, we pay Y, while structuring Y as service credits spread over years. Utilities will point to risk transfer, while ratepayers still finance the hardware. Regulators will accept targets without tools to monitor them. The guardrail is simple and rare. Tie the allowed return to outcomes, not just capital deployed. If non-revenue water doesn't fall by the pledged amount, the allowed return ratchets down automatically. If energy intensity rises, a climate rider shrinks. That flips the incentive from install to deliver. There's also the question of who pays for climate that's global. Some adaptation should be socialized. Federal grants for wildfire-fouled watersheds, state funds for drought resilience that keeps regions viable. Private owners prefer rate-basable projects over grant-funded ones because grants don't earn returns. A city that keeps public ownership can blend grants and bonds. A private operator will tilt to debt and equity. Climate plans need procurement rules that prefer outside money first, owner finance last. Meanwhile, the bakery sees the climate fee without a climate plan she can touch. Her town's plant installed solar canopies in the staff lot and a monitor in the lobby. The 1960s trunk main that feeds her block still breaks after heat waves. The utility calls both resilience. One earns returns on panels and inverters. The other would too, but fixing it doesn't make a brochure. She doesn't distrust climate science. She distrusts budgets that treat climate as a brand. The honest version of the future costs money. New sources, tougher treatment, floodproofing, redundancy, all necessary. The fraud is turning climate into a blanket that covers every CAPEX ambition and bills it as virtue. Communities have to separate the two. Fund the boring upgrades that prevent the boil notice. Question the shiny network that doesn't reduce a single outage. If climate is the new language of investment, it needs a grammar of proof. Personal defense. What you can do before your city sells. If the model is built to move quietly, your best defense is to hear it early. The first signal isn't a press release. It's an agenda item that sounds dull. Watch for phrases like strategic review, asset optimization, valuation study, or an RFP for utility advisory services. Those are the on-ramps. Ask for the RFPs and the advisor contracts. If compensation is contingent on a sale, say it plainly at a meeting. This fee biases the process. Push for advisors who get paid whether or not the city sells, and for a public-side banker at the table. Next, learn your regulator's calendar. Rate cases, rider filings, mergers, each has a docket and a comment window. Show up early with specific asks. Request the cost of service study, depreciation schedules, and the exhibit that shows bill impact per usage tier. Ask for a simple thing that shifts leverage. A bill impact table for a renter in a studio, a family of 4, and a small business that uses water as an input. Numbers in human shapes change hearings. When you read testimony, look for red flags that hide in expert language. Harmonization can mean raising lower local rates to a system average. Cash flow alignment often means a new rider that hits before evidence is audited in a full case. Synergies should have a line item and a date. If they don't, they're fluff. Ask for 3 things in writing: a cap on riders, automatic credits when promised projects slip, and a requirement to refile if costs beat estimates by more than a set margin. Don't ignore the small leaks close to home. Audit your building for silent losses. A toilet flapper or a misread meter can swing a month's bill like a rider. Photograph your meter register at the start and end of a week. If usage spikes while you're away, put those pictures in an appeal. In multi-unit buildings, confirm who's responsible for internal leaks under your lease. In some cities, landlords must repair leaks within set timelines. Cite the code, not just the inconvenience. If a smart meter rollout arrives, ask for the error rate and the dispute process. Get the installation photo of your meter's register before and after swap. If your bill jumps, you'll need proof. Request a meter accuracy test and the calibration certificate. If the result is within tolerance, but your usage doubled, ask for hourly interval data. Leaks leave patterns, so do billing system errors. Use every relief valve that exists. Income-based rates and hardship programs are underused because the forms are miserable. Organize sign-up nights at libraries and faith centers. Bring notaries and scanners. If your city offers flexible payment plans, push them to auto-enroll delinquent accounts before liens attach. In hearing rooms, ask commissioners to condition any increase on expanded arrearage management and a shutoff moratorium during extreme heat or cold. Your small business needs its own playbook. Separate process water from sanitation where possible. A second meter can keep sewer charges from applying to irrigation or evaporative uses. Install point-of-use shutoffs and log daily readings when riders are pending. If you can shift heavy water tasks to off-peak days when you're on-site, you'll catch issues fast. And negotiate. Commercial customers sometimes have access to usage audits and rate class reviews that residential accounts don't. Demand them. Coalition beats commentary. Tenants, seniors, small businesses, school staff, and utility workers share incentives, even when they don't share politics. Build a listserv. Divide the work. One group watches council agendas, another watches the regulator's docket, a third reviews contractor invoices and related party disclosures. Publish what you find in plain English. Who gets paid, for what, and when. Ask local reporters to sit with you through a rate case. Give them the questions before the hearing. Push for simple guardrails now, before a sale is proposed. Pass an ordinance that requires voter approval for any transfer of water assets. Require disclosure of all advisor fee structures and ban success fees tied to closing. Mandate that any climate-labeled project publish a value-for-money analysis with public data and a pilot before scale. Fund an independent consumer advocate through a tiny surcharge, so someone at the table works only for ratepayers, not for the department or the owner. Then repeat it everywhere you can: PDA meetings, small business groups, neighborhood chats. Virality starts local. Finally, show up when the paper is posted, not when the bill arrives. Ask for the annexes, not the press release. Put your questions on the record. Meeting after meeting, clause by clause, is how the pivot happened. Meeting by meeting, clause by clause, is how you slow it down or stop it. Policy fixes, rewriting the incentives. If the problem is incentives, the fix is to rewrite them. That starts where deals begin: procurement. Make it boring and binding. Ban success fees for advisors tied to closing a sale. When a consultant earns more if the city privatizes, every memo leans that way. Require that advisors be paid regardless of outcome, and publish their scopes, deliverables, and fees before votes. Add a public side banker to any strategic review. Someone who can model public borrowing costs, grant options, and the long tail of rate impacts without a cut of the transaction. Transparency isn't a press release, it's the annexes. Pass local rules that force publication of every contract exhibit, especially related party agreements. Shared services, insurance, rent, IT. Post rate case work papers, the spreadsheets that turn miles of pipe into line items, so people can audit the math. Create an online dashboard that tracks capital projects by neighborhood. Promise start dates, actual completion, cost variance, and who got paid. If a rider funds a project that slips, credits should trigger automatically on the next bill for affected zip codes. Miss a milestone, pay a credit. No forms, no phone trees. Rate design needs surgery. Returns should lean on outcomes, not just capital deployed. Write performance-based mechanisms into tariffs. If non-revenue water doesn't fall as pledged, the allowed return ratchets down a quarter point until it does. Tie part of the return to service metrics, boil notices, repair times, complaint resolution, weighted for neighborhoods with the worst history. Decouple revenue from pure volume, so conservation isn't punished, but cap fixed charges to protect low users. Require multi-year rate plans with hard caps on rider totals and mandatory sunsets. If a rider's scope expands, it must refile as a full case with new public hearings. Ownership filters matter for essential services. Prohibit leveraged buyouts of water systems. If an owner wants to extract dividends, they can do it after meeting leverage and service thresholds certified by an independent auditor. Cap debt-to-asset ratios for regulated utilities, and make breaching caps trigger automatic dividend suspensions, not just stern letters. If a sale is proposed, force a public interest test with a bright line affordability metric. No approved transaction if bills for a median usage household would exceed a set share of median income within 5 years, absent offsetting credits. Build regulatory muscle so these rules bite. Fund an independent consumer advocate with its own budget, separate from the commission and the utility, paid by a small system-wide surcharge. Give that office intervener funding to hire engineers, accountants, and translators for outreach. Mandate that commissioners publish plain language decisions with side-by-side bill impact tables for a studio renter, a family of 4, and a small business. Require utilities to provide machine-readable data for audits, hourly usage anonymized, leak maps, response times, so community groups and journalists can check claims. Fix the climate loophole without gutting adaptation. Require value-for-money tests for any project labeled resilience. Cost per gallon saved, outage minutes reduced, energy per gallon treated, compared to cheaper alternatives. Demand pilots with public data before scaling vendor packages. Prioritize grants over debt. If federal or state money is available, utilities must seek it and document results before rate-basing owner-financed versions. Tie climate riders to measurable risk reduction with automatic de-escalators when targets are met. No permanent charges for temporary threats. Write shutoff rules that respect survival. Ban residential shutoffs during extreme heat and cold. Require utilities to auto-enroll eligible households in income-based rates using existing public data matches. No maze of paperwork. Cap late fees and prohibit water liens from converting into foreclosure for primary residences. For small businesses, require leak adjustment policies that credit documented losses and allow deferred payment plans that survive a rider spike. Guard contracts against quiet extraction. Ban mandatory arbitration for public utilities. Keep disputes in open court. Require clawbacks if promised replacement miles or leak reductions fall short. Real dollars, not future service credits. Cap related party margins. Shared services must be bid against outside quotes every 3 years. If an affiliate profits on a sale leaseback, regulators should disallow recovery on the markup. Finally, put decisions back in public hands. Require voter approval for any sale of water assets. Mandate citizen oversight boards with access to data and the power to place items on commission agendas. Publish a 5-year rolling capital plan with neighborhood-level detail and hold quarterly meetings in those neighborhoods to report progress. The model thrives in silence. Policy fixes make it speak and answer. The last bill, what this fight is really about. We go back to the kitchen where this started. The envelope sits next to a stack of marked up notices and a hand-scribbled budget. The bakery owner's partner flips the bill and traces the line where the system improvement fee climbed again. They've learned vocabulary they never wanted. Rate base, rider decoupling. Tonight it's simpler. Do we stretch payroll another week or defer the mixer repair? Their kid walks in with a science worksheet about the water cycle. Evaporation, condensation, precipitation. There's no box for rider. What changed since the first spike? They fought. They went to hearings, joined a neighborhood email list, met the union crew lead who explained why the hydrant on their block always sticks. A small win landed last month. The commission forced automatic credits after boil notices. It didn't erase the fees. It did replace the feeling of being ignored with the sense that someone had to answer questions in public. Other shifts were quieter. Their council passed a law requiring voter approval for any sale. A transparency portal went live with related party contracts posted in plain English. The bakery owner clicked through one evening and found the line where shared services, IT, billed the utility for software licensed from a parent company. She didn't know what to do with that except remember it when a resilience surcharge appeared with a sunny logo. Bills still hurt. Rent climbed. Flour costs pulsed with the valley's leases. The drought bond coupon folded into base rates the same quarter they replaced a failing compressor. The relief didn't come as a drop in totals. It came as clarity about what they were paying for and a plan to press the next hearing for a rider cap that sunsets. This is the hinge the story turns on. Water is not optional. It's a daily vote you don't get to skip. When ownership and incentives turn it into a yield product, the cost isn't just dollars. It's the loss of trust that the tap will run without you studying annexes. It's the hours you spend boiling instead of sleeping, the Saturday you lose to flushing lines in a school, the small decision to skip a shift so a child can bathe at a neighbor's house when pressure drops again. That's the sticky, shareable truth. Everyone you know opens the same envelope. There's an unseen cost that compounds. When monopolies serving survival carry a profit mandate, social risk migrates into private math. A missed payment becomes a lien. A lien becomes a housing worry. A surge in fixed charges punishes conservation and squeezes the lowest users hardest. A commission trims a rate case. A company slows maintenance to protect dividends. The ledger balances. The neighborhood absorbs the variance. The choice isn't abstract. It's whether water stays a public trust with democratic friction or stabilizes as a regulated asset with smooth guidance. A public trust is messy. It requires meetings, budgets, engineers on staff who could earn more across town. It delivers the ability to blend grants, to set equity targets, to eat margin when people can't. A yield product is tidy. It delivers capital on time, filings on schedule, dividends on cadence. It also prioritizes what earns. Climate compresses the timeline. Drought and flood right deadlines regulators can't move. The question in each place becomes, who carries the burden of adaptation, who earns on adaptation, and who decides? In towns that kept control, councils debated whether to underground the main by the nursing home first or floodproof the plant. In places that sold, that debate happened behind the language of constructive regulation and rate-based growth, with a surcharge landing either way. Our family doesn't want to be experts. They want to run ovens, pay staff, and help their kid diagram a watershed without thinking about wholesale adjustments. They don't get that luxury anymore. So they do the next thing that scales. They bring 3 other shop owners to a sign-up night for hardship programs. They testify once per quarter with copies of bills stapled to written comments. And they back a candidate who promises an independent consumer advocate with teeth. A year from now, their bill might still be higher than it was. It will carry fewer surprises if the rider cap lands. The hydrant might open on the first turn after the new crew finishes training. The resilience surcharge might shrink if the commission ties it to targets that finally bite. The wins won't read like headlines. They'll read like a quiet month where nothing breaks and a loaf doesn't have to go up again. This fight is about rules that decide who absorbs shocks and who converts them into steady income. It's about whether the commons survives financialization intact. It's about the last bill, the one that tells you if democracy lives in the utility closet or just at the ballot box. When thirst turns into a revenue stream, the price isn't just money. It's the quiet erosion of trust that binds a city together. If this hit home, share it with someone who opened a higher bill this month. Subscribe, and watch our Power Grid episode next. Same incentives, bigger consequences. Your city's water is somewhere on an agenda. Find the notice, read the annex, and show up. Then tell 2 people to do the same.